What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live for an emergency live podcast on a Tuesday evening right before training camp, as the Chargers and Justin Herbert have agreed to a $262.5 million contract extension. So had to do an emergency pod, of course, and happy to be joined tonight by Mr. Alex Insdorf. Recently got a promotion of sorts as well, now writing for Chargers Wire instead of Bolt Beat. So happy to have Alex on tonight as well. Alex, what's up, man? How's the Caribbean?
It's good. I don't know if any of you guys can hear the birds yet, but they'll be in shortly, I'm sure. But yeah, had to jump in and wanted to see what the guys were thinking about with this Herbert contract. I'm rusty at the live pods. Give me a minute. But I did want to read off a stat that Dan Fouts, 40 years ago in 1983, set the record to become the highest paid quarterback at $1 million per season. Justin Herbert just got $52.5 million per year for 5 years, and he's our guy.
Yeah. Similar tweet there from Tom Pelissero tweeting out that in 10 years ago, in 2013, Aaron Rodgers was the highest paid player in the NFL at $22 million per year. And now there's like 36 or whatever. I should have the tweet up right now, but I don't. But yeah, it's like 40%, like 500% more players are making that. And it's pretty crazy to hear about this kind of money. So we'll break down some specifics. We'll talk about some generalities. This is going to be a relatively quicker podcast because we just have the one thing to talk about. Tyler and I just dropped the podcast on the Chargers feed earlier today. So you get us twice in one day. Hopefully you guys don't hate us yet. So if you missed that, go check it out. Had a great conversation with Mr. Eric Smith. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing very well. I decided to wear the yellow jerseys today because I knew Alex was coming on and he hates them. So I did that. Alex, the birds behind you, do they still tweet or do they just make X noises?
I don't know if they tweet or zeet, but you'll hear them either way.
Zeet? Is that how we say the thing now? Is it a zeet? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, who knows? All right, so like I said, we'll break down some specifics, talk about the Herbert contract. If you guys have some questions, feel free to fire away. Obviously, this is really focusing on the contract extension. We'll get into some training camp stuff throughout the rest of the week. We'll have you covered there. First and foremost, I think for me, like one of the things that I was most curious about was the structure of the contract in terms of the guarantees, in terms of how the money was going to be distributed. This contract, according to Daniel Popper, includes $218 million in total guarantees. That's not necessarily fully guaranteed. There's a lot of differences here. There's a lot of injury guarantees. But in the first year of the contract, Justin Herbert will get $100 million paid out to him over the course of that season. So kind of crazy when you put it in those kind of terms here. But Tyler, we'll get your thoughts here. What was your first reaction when it came down to seeing the actual money, break today for Justin Herbert?
The total contract and the APY was kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. You looked at the contracts and it was, $51 million for Jalen Hurts, 52 for Lamar Jackson. So I figured it'd be like, 53. Turns out to be 52.5. So that's not a surprise. But $100 million, 30% of the contract in year one is awesome for him. Obviously, I would love, after I looked at my teacher salary, to get $100 million in my first season. Nobody's giving me that, but I also don't play, the most important position. I'm not certainly one of the 5 best in the NFL at that. So good for him. It's a great contract. Some people weren't really sure how it was going to look. Is it going to be 10 years? And I think a lot of people talked about, well, Herbert's a really good guy. He'll take a team-friendly deal and do it for like, 40 million APY. Like, no, like that's not really how it works. And but it's a good deal for both sides. Lots of guarantees for Herbert, not some outlandish, outrageous contract. And congratulations on Justin Herbert for being the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for about one more week.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Joe Burrow here. Joe gets to kind of sit and wait and see what happens. Just to clarify, the $100 million is not going to be his cap hit. It's going to be how much cash he's paid that season. So don't freak out about the cap structure. Again, we do not have those specific numbers just yet, but we know that that's the cash throughout. So we've talked a lot about, cash versus cap, especially when Arjun's been on the show. So $100 million is going to be the cash that he has paid. We'll see what happens with the cap hit there, but we'll bring in Alex here now. Alex, your first thoughts when you see the amount of money and maybe the guaranteed money that Justin Herbert gets today?
Yeah, I mean, when Arjun wrote the $100 million thing in the chat of just like that's his cash in 1 year, and I believe he broke Lamar Jackson's previous record of 80 million in terms of a year cash flow. So that just is
that is
insane. And so I think that, with the way the market's going, all the numbers, as Tyler said, made sense in terms of what the APY was. But again, for the Chargers to make this kind of investment, it's just not really something they've done in the modern era. For Phillip Rivers, I think he was the second or third highest paid quarterback for a bit there, behind Russell Wilson and Cam Newton and some other guys. But to basically, put this stamp on, you're the guy for Justin Herbert, I think is really important in terms of carrying this franchise. And, it'll be interesting to see how Tom Telesco, given their cap situation, will still go about building a contender with some of the cap problems that they have next year that we've already kind of talked about with the restructures they've done this year. So that balancing act will be interesting. Contract won't kick in until 2025. So they have some time to kind of get their house in order and do like a mini retool if they need to. But yeah, ultimately it's just very well deserved for Justin Herbert. And honestly, my first thought when I saw it was, I remember the three of us sitting in a Patreon room when they made the pick, and we were just like, I don't know about this guy, right? It wasn't like, oh, he was a bust or anything, but it was just like, I certainly didn't see him becoming the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. So, for him to take all of that potential and all of the work that he showed at Oregon and, multiply it and, step on the field every time and continue to prove ever since that Kansas City game that he deserved that kind of investment and that kind of, power from a franchise is just crazy. So it's very cool to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. Herbert's come a long way. And, I think if you can go back and watch some of his Oregon stuff, it's just remarkable to see that kind of growth. And, the Chargers made a great video about it. QB 1 of 1. I thought it was fantastic, kind of reminiscing over the past 3 seasons. And, it's just such a cool moment for the team. We had kind of similar conversations when Joey got paid, similar conversation when Derwin got paid. But it's just magnified because Justin is the quarterback. Justin is the guy that is going to lead this franchise. And, I know there's been some questions about his leadership and things like that. But we all know that the Chargers are going to have a chance to win every single game that they play as long as Justin Herbert is the quarterback of this team. And it's just a different kind of feeling. We had that feeling with Phillip Rivers. And I think we have it again with Justin Herbert. So to see him get rewarded this way, it's incredibly well deserved. It's the way the market works. Like Tyler said, the whole like take a team friendly deal is never really a thing. This market is going to drive the market, and the agents are going to do their thing. So happy to see him get the contract he deserves. I think the three of us are generally very player friendly when it comes to these kind of things. All three of us generally want to see the players get paid, and Justin Herbert gets that. So like Tyler said and Alex have said, the contract structure not necessarily was a surprise in terms of the total money value. But, I think something that might be a surprise for some people reading this is the amount of guaranteed money. Brad Spielberger pointing out that Justin Herbert got $33 million more in guaranteed money than Lamar Jackson did. And he was 2 quarterback contracts ago. So the Chargers have, they backed up the Brinks truck, man. They are all in on the Justin Herbert era. And this is like the biggest stamp of approval you could give him. And for a team that has such a reputation of being cash poor, being cheap, all this stuff, they threw all that away and said, we're going to give Justin Herbert as much guaranteed money as we possibly can here. And we'll figure the rest out down the road.
Yeah, at this point, that's such an old, tired narrative that I hate. I understand that there's a history, but at this point with this regime, like it or not, when it comes to the first round picks, at least, they certainly pay these guys what they deserve, what they're worth. And next in line, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Mike Williams, Justin Herbert, and then signing Corey Linsley, etc. So it's a fantastic day. When I really became a Chargers fan, Rivers had been with the team. He was already on his second contract by that point. With something like this is the first time I've really had the quarterback sign and then just see, like, not that we didn't already, but we can just see like a decade in front of us, 15 years maybe in front of us of Justin Herbert as the quarterback. So, you know, like Alex said, when he was first drafted, it was very like hit or miss, or very just mixed in the room with, you know, the 20 of us or whatever it was that were there on that Zoom stream, because you didn't know, you know. And I think that regardless of how we felt at the time, this is the outcome that we wanted, right? Like whatever you felt about the quarterback, as soon as you got the guy, this is what you want. You want him to be that good. And he was immediately, has been good. There are not, I mean, listen, you could be the team that gives a ton of money to Russell Wilson, and that's very shaky and it hasn't worked out so far. You could be the team that gives a lot of money to Deshaun Watson for whatever reason. And that's a significantly different situation. It feels really good to be the Chargers to be giving this money to Justin Herbert, but I'm pretty sure it's just going to like invest, you know, in like real estate or something, real estate brisket and like fisheries or something. Yeah. He'll just buy Eugene, Oregon.
He'll just buy you the whole city of Eugene.
Exactly. So I'm happy to have Herbert as our quarterback for, you know, at least until what, he's 30-ish or whatever, until what's the final year of this deal? When is it?
So he'll be
29.
Yeah, he'll be 29 at the end of this contract.
And then we'll just pay him again. And yeah, no, it's awesome.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say, you know, Tyler alluded to the quarterbacks that have gotten paid and have not necessarily worked out. I'll add another name in that list, and Carson Wentz, who, you know, also got that kind of big deal. And something that I think is important to talk about with these three contracts that have been given out recently with Hurts, Jackson, and Justin Herbert is that they were each given a no trade clause. That follows up with what Deshaun Watson got in Houston. So it's interesting to see that this is, you know, further becoming the norm to give your quarterback the no trade clause. And it kind of means that these franchises, you know, not that we're ever, I don't think, going to be in a position where the Chargers would have to trade Herbert or move on from Herbert or any of these things. But to give that amount of power to a quarterback in your organization is kind of unprecedented in this player empowerment era, if you want to call it that. So, yeah, just another, you know, measure of faith that the Chargers have in Justin Herbert. And, you know, I think that's really cool to see that they were willing to go to that extent. They might have not had a choice given Herbert's, you know, agents and given the trends around the league, but still, you know, a lot of respect and trust to put into Herbert there.
Yeah, the no trade clause is certainly interesting. I think this is really indicative of how valuable the quarterbacks are in today's league. And everybody kind of knows it, right? Like this is very much a quarterback league at this point, but the no trade clause is just kind of that next level security for these quarterbacks to be able to, you know, if things go to the worst situation possible, they can control where they end up going. If the team decides to hit a reset. Obviously, none of us are hoping that happens. And, you know, Justin Herbert certainly wishing he sticks around for the long haul here. But just a change of the times, you know, if you want to look at it that way, to see these quarterbacks get that much power and be able to control where they could potentially go after their time runs out or whatever at their current team.
Which is a little different than the current running back market. Asked Saquon Barkley today, obviously getting $0.1 million in incentives if they make the postseason in a division that has the Cowboys, the division that has the Eagles.
So weird.
So, I mean, it's not worse. And then it's certainly, you can ask Austin. Austin Eckler is a better man than I am, because if I were having this predicament and then the quarterback made $262 million with $100 million guaranteed in year one, and then you put a microphone in front of me, listen, he's a good man for answering those questions.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I just got to say, shout out to the politician, Austin Eckler. Those answers were really great.
That's a great way to play the game, for sure. Derwin was definitely fired up. Sebastian Joseph Day making a great point. Dinner's on Justin next time. So, you know, we'll dive into the specifics of this contract, you know, once they come out in terms of the cap hits and things like that. Chargers actually theoretically could gain around $3 million in cap space for 2023 by converting his current base salary into a signing bonus after this contract extension. So maybe a little help down the line here in training camp with the Chargers and some cap space here.
Or they don't do a single thing and we have depth issues along the entire roster.
Yeah, I choose option A personally. All right, so we'll get into some long-term question marks here as well. Obviously, the Chargers are $60 million in the red next year. We'll see what happens with Herbert's cap and how much that can change here. But Alex, I guess, how concerned are you about the cap sheet of this team now that we know the kind of money that they're paying Justin Herbert?
I just think it's with the territory, and ultimately it's all of the things that we've really talked about over the years, right? We've talked about the drafts for the Chargers, and we've talked about the Chiefs drafts constantly. The need to hit on not every pick from round 1 to 7, but to get really good value out of those day 3 picks. And the one thing the Chargers, outside of Jamari, really have kind of been maligned for, is not hitting so hard on those day 3 picks. And it's just, if you're going to be paying Justin Herbert this money and you don't have the advantage of his rookie contract anymore, you then have to be a little bit smarter in the draft and have to get a little bit more thrifty in that respect. So I think that that's one thing to pay attention to as the years go on here. And then, the other things are, there's going to be tough financial decisions either way. The Chargers, before they even gave this contract to Herbert, were already in the predicament they are in next year, given the 4 max restructures that they did. So ultimately, it's just about, do you think Herbert is good enough to carry this team over the line, regardless of what the other personnel is? And the Chargers' answer and our answer to that is yes. But I do think you're going to have to see, and I think the Chargers have gotten a little bit smarter, certainly at the draft, have valued different things a little bit more, certainly in the Staley era, in terms of building out the trenches and sort of building out the team from there, as opposed to previous iterations of the Telesco Chargers. So, that's the thing I think to pay attention to, as far as, am I concerned that they're going to pay all this money to Herbert and there's not going to be anything for the rest of the team? Not really. I mean, there's ways to finagle the cap in the NFL, but it's just definitely going to require the Chargers to be a little bit more aggressive in the draft instead of being aggressive in free agency as they were in 2021, when we were doing the podcast.
Yeah. As far as, having to hit on these draft picks, the good news is, and I think Steve and I started to talk about this recently, last episode or whatever, they do have a lot of 2024 pending free agents, which will help them in 2025 with the comp picks, because they can't afford anybody else next year. So most of these guys are probably going to walk. You're talking about Michael Davis, Austin Johnson, Austin Eckler, Gerald Everett, Kenneth Murray, and then, Jalen Guyton, Josh Kelly, etc. But these guys, we were talking about the Eagles and how far they, had come in building out these comp picks and working that system. The Chargers will kind of have to pivot to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a pivot in a few areas. You're going to be talking about more like Morgan Fox level contracts, instead of, your JC Jacksons, your Khalil Macks and things like that. But like the length of this contract, I think, will give them some flexibility down the road as well. You can restructure his contract probably after the second year, and you can have some other, big free agents signings and contracts. And like, Rashawn Slater is going to reset the tackle market next year at this time. So they're going to have some bigger contracts, but that's not going to, be a hindrance on building out this football team. They'll certainly have to place a greater emphasis on draft value and trading down and accumulating picks that way. But, you look at the way that the Chiefs have kind of assembled things, and I know they're kind of like the gold standard, right? But they've had big contracts all across the board with the Mahomes contract. You look at the way the Bills have kind of, tried to handle things with Josh Allen and his contract. There are ways to find that extra money, but you're also probably not going to be swinging for the fences as much as you're just trying to get some, solid free agent additions in here every single year, as opposed to making those big swings. So it's going to be an adjustment. The Chargers are going to have to figure out how to get more depth on this roster. And I think we've seen them kind of make some strong strides in that regard over the last few years with Brandon Staley and the way that he's kind of influenced the front office. But absolutely, it's going to be an adjustment when you can't just say, hey, we have a quarterback on a rookie contract. Let's go sign JC Jackson and Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson and trade for Khalil Mack. Like, that's not the kind of flexibility you're going to have going forward.
Yeah, which is why I appreciate over the last couple of years, the last 3 years, the drafts, I should say, them focusing on those premium positions. You have 3 rookies along the offensive line, one of it tackle. Yes, eventually you're going to have to pay these guys, but for right now, you have rookies, and the highest paid guys, Corey Linsley, who deserves it. And in that regard, like if you have to go get another center and that's your big money spend, it's not like edge rusher, it's not like wide receiver. And they went out and they got two league. Granted, they'll probably add some more edge rushers in the future. Sure. You get Quentin Johnston at corner. They have Asante Samuel Jr., Jaw Taylor. If all these guys at premium positions, they're starting to work into the system. So that should help them if they continue that strategy moving forward. It's amazing when you invest in these premium positions, how it also kind of helps not just your team immediately, but also in the future, because you don't have to spend $25 million on a receiver, $30 million on a pass rusher per year because you didn't draft one.
Yeah, and the other thing I would just say, adding to that, is the Chargers will also have their chances in free agency to still be able to spend big at times, right? And over the duration of this Justin Herbert contract, it's just going to be about picking and choosing their moments, I think. We just saw the Bills, unfortunately, the Von Miller contract probably not looking the best right now, in terms of that 6-year, $120 million deal they gave him. So that's kind of an example of trying to balance things out, and they'll have their chances to take shots, but they'll also going to have to take value of those smaller Morgan Fox deals, much like Steven said.
Yeah. So, I would not be pessimistic today. I think this is a good, nice day for the franchise. We get Justin Herbert to make the highest paid player in the NFL. Super excited to see what he is able to do for this season with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator here. It's been a minute since we've had Alex on the show here. So, Alex, I know we've kind of had maybe sour taste is maybe an understatement at the way the season ended. But now that we've got training camp on the horizon, has the hype started to build up it for you with at least for Justin Herbert in the offense, I should ask?
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to get back into the season. And I think, having Herbert back on this contract, I mean, there's still some problems with the team that I'm sure you and Tyler will get into, over the next couple months here, and I'll talk about on both breakdowns and stuff. But I think, what this team can be, assuming everyone stays healthy, assuming the defense doesn't underperform, and some of the things that, we think about as weaknesses on this team, I do think thinking about the potential there is still always exciting. And this was a team that, as much as 27-0 does suck, was, a field goal away from beating the Jaguars, right? And still being in that mix in the AFC. When you have someone like Justin Herbert, I think you can still perform at that level. So I guess it's still excitement, but also cautious nervousness, I would call it, at how this season will go. In terms of, how make or break we've called this season for the franchise, and, as far as Staley, as far as Telesco, as far as some of these people. So yeah, still super excited for the season, and super excited to cover it all the way on here and Chargers Wire. So yeah, super excited to get into it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that excitement building up. I don't want to budge from my prediction of the Chiefs are winning the division, but I don't know. It's something about looking at the team more and interacting with people who break these guys down. So, Sean Syed, Ted Wynn, Eric Smith, like talking to these guys about the coaches, looking at everything, you just start to feel like so confident in your team again. I've been there before, so we'll see. But excitement is definitely brewing.
Yeah, and I think there's been some conversations about Brandon Staley's defense that have maybe made me a little bit more optimistic than I previously have been.
That's how I feel.
If you the guys at the Ringer all do great stuff, but Benjamin Solak and Stephen Ruiz have been dissecting kind of like broader global questions about the NFL. And last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say, they did an episode about the future of NFL offenses. And this past week, they did future of NFL defenses. And they painted Brandon Staley in a very, very positive light. I think it's worth a listen for anybody who maybe is a little bit pessimistic about Brandon Staley's defense. They do a fantastic job with that. And, I think you just kind of, it's that time of year, man. We're going to get to training camp on Saturday. We're going to see some Justin Herbert bombs to Quentin Johnston, and we're going to go on the podcast and talk about like 13-4 or some shit. Like it's just the time of year, man. And I'm super excited that football is back this week.
We're gonna go on the podcast and talk about whatever this year's version of the Tyron Johnson bombs is. We'll have to figure out what it is at training camp when Tyler gets there and breaks out the iPhone, but we'll figure it out.
Android, chill.
I have an Android too. Sorry, I didn't know which one you were. So, but
It's because of the Androids that we do not have a group text that we have to communicate on Facebook Messenger like we're a bunch of boomers over here.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's your fault. I'm hearing it's actually your fault in this case.
It seems like
usually
you're
it's
the one.
mine. Yeah.
All good. All right. This has been a lot of fun. Obviously, a quick podcast like we talked about. Tyler, Alex, any other final thoughts before we head out for the evening?
I'll be completely honest. As much as this is awesome to see, it really didn't change anything for me. You know, like it was expected to get done. The numbers were completely expected. And Herbert, I had no questions about him heading into this season. So other than like what record can he break? So I just can't wait to get to camp so I can really see the guys that I have a lot of questions about.
I'm excited that there will only be one day of Herbert contract questions, and then we can move on to potentially other questions at training camp. So, no, I mean it's awesome to see Herbert get paid, awesome to see him get rewarded, and awesome to see the Chargers, really, we already knew they were headed in this direction over the next couple of years, but to really dedicate themselves to a guy like Justin Herbert is just awesome to see at this juncture, and it's going to make the team really fun to cover the season. As Steven said, there's reasons for optimism. Staley can coach a really good defense when it's healthy, and even sometimes when it's not, like in the Dolphins and the Niners games, to give him his respect. So it's just fun to see Chargers football back, and thank God we don't have to like create our own content anymore. It's awesome. The machine just feeds itself.
Yeah, we were talking with Eric Smith, and it was like we literally dedicated episodes to his articles with the coaches, and so we don't have to do that anymore. So glad that time of year is over. Training camp is officially tomorrow. Team has reported. Justin Herbert's contract is officially signed and dealt with. So you love to see it. I hate dealing with like the constant hold in questions, which is the new thing. Although Zach Martin and some others are holding out, so they're going against the grain and going back to the old ways. So we'll see how that works out for them. But getting this done before training camp, I think, is a huge win. Would have been I would have not hated. I would have been annoyed if this would have lasted like all throughout the whole camp. But Justin Herbert, he's a man of the people. Gets it done before practice starts. So can't wait for practice this week. Tyler's going to be out there tomorrow. We'll be down there together, the two of us, on a Saturday. So we're going to have lots of training camp content over the next few weeks, and can't wait. Alex, thanks for joining us tonight. Tyler, thanks for joining me as always. Thanks everybody for tuning in for the chat. If you are listening to this, make sure to leave us a rating or review. We always appreciate that positive feedback over there as well. That's going to do it tonight. We'll see you guys later. As always, bolt up.